Fantastic. Thank you very much, Robin, for joining us. We have Robin Wilton today on the call, and we are going to be talking about a pressing topic and a very important topic of the day. So thank you very much, Robin, for coming forward, volunteering, agreeing to speak with us about the topic of the UK's, the United Kingdom's Online Safety Act. My name is Weke. I am a volunteer communications director of the Cybersecurity SIG. So thank you again, Robin. Let's just go straight into the discussion and start with the first question. It's what the United Kingdom's Online Safety Act actually is. Can you just give us an overview and tell us what this act is?
Yes, sure. How long have we got? The reason I say that is because I think one of the issues with the Online Safety Act is that over time it became such a grab bag of policy aspiration that it's almost easier to say what it doesn't try to regulate. But that said, here's a quick flyover. Okay, the kinds of content and activity that the Online Safety Act regulates includes content relating to, and that's a phrase from the Act, child sexual abuse, extreme pornography, extreme sexual violence, intimate image abuse, sexual exploitation. Those are the kind of sex-related ones. Controlling or coercive behavior, promoting or facilitating suicide. Those are bullying/controlling related ones. Inciting violence, racially or religiously aggravated public order offences, illegal immigration and people smuggling, selling illegal drugs or weapons, terrorism. Those are the kind of violence-related ones. And also fraud, algorithms, mis and disinformation, harassment and stalking. It includes those. It's not just those, but it includes those.
Okay. I guess the question then for me, everything up until the last two or the last one sounded positive, especially for young people, those without a lot of experience of the world, how they can be exploited online and even offline. It all sounded a bit positive to me, but you said regulate. Maybe that's the question. So the Act may regulate these areas, right? These and other areas. Why did it come into being at all? What drove the need for this?
That's a good question, because partly you're asking there what motivates a government to legislate things. If I look at it from the outside of government, there is a legitimate argument that digital communication amplifies some kinds of illegal behavior, such as child abuse or domestic violence, and that it makes some kinds of crime, especially networked crimes, easier to plan and execute. And I'm thinking there about things like drug smuggling, arms trafficking, people trafficking, and child sexual abuse material. But all those activities are also real-world crimes. They have real-world elements too, and they're rooted in societal problems. They are not rooted in technology. So politicians might actually genuinely believe that the Online Safety Act will solve those problems. But I think they are optimistic if they think that, especially if they think that the Online Safety Act would somehow mean that they don't have to take the other long-term and often difficult steps to address the societal root causes of those problems. And there's a really good paper by the late Professor Ross Anderson called Chat Control or Child Protection, in which he highlights the links there between domestic violence, radicalization, and child abuse. And he ends up suggesting that a lot of law enforcement in this area is actually looking in the wrong place. So that's my view from the outside. I don't think it's excessively cynical to suggest that an unstated goal of the Online Safety Act is simply greater and more effective surveillance powers over UK citizens to supplement those that already exist under things like the Investigatory Powers Act 2016 and amended in 2024 and other legislation. I don't think that is a cynical view. I think it's borne out by looking at the direction of travel of UK legislation on online communication.
So we were supposed to get certain benefits. So our third question is what we thought we were getting versus what we are actually getting, going on to the fourth question. But are we saying that the government possibly did not get the right kind of advice when they put this together, when they had the thoughts, the ideas? They did not go to the technology experts to say, okay, how will this help us with the face-to-face crimes? What do you think?
I think they got plenty of what I would think of as the right kind of advice. I don't think that ended up having enough weight in their deliberations. I've actually separately, and I can provide you with this later, but I've got a list of senior UK cybersecurity and national security professionals including ones in government, including GCHQ and the National Cybersecurity Centre, saying, be careful with the Online Safety Act. In particular, do not mess with people's ability to encrypt their conversations, because if you do, you'll do more harm than good. And I don't think that has played enough of a part in the government's thinking here.
This takes us to the question of VPNs. My goodness, the news online, the discussions, the surge. I posted something on the ISOC portal yesterday, the Cybersecurity SIG ISOC portal page, surge in people signing up for VPN services, the number of people who are interested in, and it will sound to some as if ordinary citizens, residents in the UK are trying to bypass government law. That's not the case, though, is it? So they received advice, and there's a possibility they did not listen, and now we're sitting with the law of unintended consequences, or what exactly is going on?
Yeah, that is really hard to tell whether this is really the outcome that the government expected or intended. And I doubt it's what they intended. It has parallels with the other recent case, which is the UK government having served that technology notice on Apple, demanding access to users' iCloud, encrypted iCloud backups. Just like this whole thing with age assurance being possible to bypass by the simple use of VPN, the Apple iCloud backup access was also trivially simple to bypass. I've got Apple devices. I have turned off iCloud on it. So they're welcome to ask my encrypted iCloud backups. There won't be anything in there. And any citizen, any criminal with half a brain cell will turn those off as well. So I really don't know if this is just naivety or if they just want to catch the stupid criminals, or I don't know. I can't speak for the government's motivation on that.
Okay, very interestingly, that's something else you've raised, which is not on the list, but it's something I've noticed over time. I suppose as one gets older, one starts to observe that laws appear only to apply to the law-abiding. For example, let's observe what we've been dealing with over the last few decades. Going to airports and taking off your necklace, your earrings, your shoes. Don't take more than 100 milliliters of each liquid type. All of that. But that only applies to the law-abiding. The nasty person, the malicious party, will find another way to do exactly what it is they always wanted to do, either by going directly to individuals on the streets, vehicle as a weapon, for example. You're going for trains, going for buses, schools, hospitals. So here we go with us, ordinary people, now being presented as the malicious parties. As you said, you turn off iCloud, but you're not malicious. People are signing up to get VPNs. They're not malicious. And you've talked about the fact that the advice was given, be careful about what you put in place, government, because you make things difficult. It doesn't mean that it will stop. It's just that everything normal will suddenly become criminalized. Is that the way to put it?
I think you give a couple of really good examples there. Just suppose that as a law-abiding citizen, I agree to use a verified identity on online platforms, and that's something seen in a government statement. Actually, it's in the government guidance about the Online Safety Act. So suppose that I agree to use a verified identity and I forego the use of VPNs because I'm a law-abiding citizen. I've actually increased my personal privacy risk. And the government does little or nothing to protect me against the privacy risks that opens up. In fact, if they want to take VPNs away, they are taking away one of my ways of protecting myself against threats that they don't protect me against. They haven't protected me against those in terms of privacy for 20 years. So I think it is entirely rational for me to take steps as I can to protect my own privacy. And to be honest, personally, I resent it when the government tries to take those away.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so this is really interesting. Politics meeting technology with a subset of cybersecurity. It's a really uncomfortable thing for, I would say, a number of people in the IT industry, cybersecurity industry. They'd rather not discuss politics. I came across a photograph online yesterday that showed apparently that GCHQ some time ago advised use VPNs. And it's like, okay, that was then. This is now. What's going on? What a contradiction.
The National Cybersecurity Centre will still advise you to use VPNs. And will still advise. I think even the government at the moment is admitting that actually MPs quite like to be able to message each other confidentially. So I think they've got themselves into a real tangle here.
So it was intended to help. It's clearly causing issues. Already there's some rumblings in the USA about how this is affecting the ability of Americans, people from the USA, to run certain businesses comfortably. Where do you see this going? There already is a petition in the UK saying repeal the Online Safety Act. Really? Where is this going? Just give us your broad view.
The last time I saw the number, that petition was up to about 400,000, maybe towards 500,000 people. I've seen petitions gain an awful lot more signatures than that and still be ignored by the government. So I don't think that is going to work. I think for governments to take that petition into account, they would also have to explain to the child safety lobby why they are backtracking. And politically, I think, as you say, that is very uncomfortable for them to do, perhaps uncomfortable enough that they just won't do it.
Right. So we are where we are now. Oh boy, with the number of screenshots being posted online showing things are being blocked. So for example, I've heard claims that even some of the protests taking place in the United Kingdom that show people protesting against immigration or illegal immigration, excessive immigration, the pictures are being blocked or stories are being blocked. That's astonishing. Wow, something as basic as people just speaking online. It's one thing to say we want to protect children. But I have to be very careful here because a politician was speaking, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, about another politician and saying we don't want to protect children. Is that why you are speaking up against the Online Safety Act? Wait, no, that's not what we're saying.
Sure. Yeah, that was Peter Kyle, the technology minister, responding to Nigel Farage. I have no desire to support or endorse Farage's attitudes in any way, but also I think it was inappropriate and inexcusable for the technology minister to be polarizing the debate in that way. I have been conducting advocacy on the encryption and online safety topic for at least the last 4 years. And the single most toxic thing in that debate is for people to make that false opposition, that if you support confidential communication, you support child abuse. That is unjustifiable, and it shuts down reasonable and rational debate. And for the minister to be saying that, I think, is quite extraordinary.
Wow. This is a touchy subject, isn't it? Talking about politics is something I can feel my skin. I don't want to talk about politics, but the gravitas, the way you have responded to that, it is a very serious topic. It is astonishing that it sounds as if we're just going to go forward. Maybe there'll be some amendments going forward, like quietly things will be amended. Can you imagine people, besides VPNs at this point, let's say Tor, so the onion ring is a VPN solution of a sort. I suppose more people will be rushing to the dark web unwittingly without wanting to. What do you think?
I think there are some very unpleasant possible consequences of legislation that is perceived as being too restrictive. And in fact, I think when it comes to age verification, which is a major strand of the Online Safety Act, and as you know, over this last weekend, so late July 2025, the age verification requirements of the Online Safety Act came into force, hence the whole VPN thing. I really worry that some of those age verification methods are weak enough or lack the robustness to prevent unscrupulous people from essentially selling proof of age credentials to young users, either in exchange for money or, worse still, in exchange for some kind of abusive contact. If the age credential that you produce is not tightly bound to the individual who is actually sitting at the keyboard or using that device, then that is a risk that you introduce. So if I can create an age-proof credential and somehow delegate that to an underage user, I'm in a position to put that underage user at risk. And I think that's a very worrying consequence.
You were talking about the possibility of age verification products being sold by malicious parties to young people.
Yeah, this already anecdotally started to happen in an EU member state when they tried to introduce a credential for young people to prove that they were under 16 to access site specifically for under 16s. In other words, it was supposed to keep everyone else out. If you think about it, an unscrupulous person would go to one of those under 16s and either threaten or bribe or in some other way persuade them to give access to that credential so that the over 16 person can get into that forum. And so the way to make that less likely is, as I say, this tight binding between the credential and the person presenting it. But the tighter that binding is, it might be, for example, live recognition of someone's face in real time. The tighter that binding is, the more of a privacy risk it presents. Because I'm having to disclose my facial biometric live in real time at each point of access.
And you have to trust the provider, the platform owner. This reminds me of the former police officer, Peter Blexley. He was on a program yesterday. I don't know if you've heard about him before. I think it was on a Talk TV program. And he talked about how he went onto a site and had to verify his age. And he thought, okay, I'll verify my age. And yes, if you verify your age, what happens to your credentials? What happens to you're trusting the platform? What kind of protections are there? And you talked earlier about concerns, the government not providing these security provisions and controls. What would you have said then? They were giving advice, as you've said, but how do we remedy this? How do we remediate this situation? It almost feels like a war in certain quarters right now online.
I think that example you just gave is actually, it's worse than you suggested. So that police officer, yes, he was having to trust the platform not to abuse the information that he was disclosing. But actually, that platform was almost certainly outsourcing the age verification to a third party. So he's actually not only having to trust the platform, he's also having to trust the third party not to abuse the information. Now, as I understand it, and I'm open to correction on this, but as I understand it, under the Online Safety Act, those third-party age assurance services are not tightly regulated. And of course, because they are at one remove from the user might not know who that age verification service is. They might not know how to contact them. They might have no recourse if something goes wrong. I think this looks like a law that has been put into practice hastily without the safeguards that would prevent breaches of trust, not just between the user and the platform, but between the user and those third-party services. And let's bear in mind also, the user has no choice about which third-party age verification service. That's the platform choosing one. The user has no control over that. And they can't say, no, I'm sorry, I don't want to use yours, I want to use this other one.
Data residency, for example, encryption standards, all of that. Oh, right. Okay, this is interesting. Okay, so just before we round up, thank you very much. This has been quite insightful and a bit unsettling, the revelations and the discussion, the outcomes. But do you have any recommendations, suggestions, just broadly speaking, rather than specifically use this platform or do things in this way? It's more any thoughts that you'd like to add before we round up? This could be for the government, for other governments. We don't copy this, please, or for just ordinary users, our viewers. Thank you. And this is going to be shared widely. There's no restriction on who will be allowed to see this, not for the members only.
Sure. I think the most important thing I can do is not pointers about Tor or VPNs. It's actually, as you said, because this could be seen by anyone in any country, the guidance I would give is focused on really three things about this bill, what we are learning as the bill comes into effect. The first one is, I think, as the bill comes into practice, we're seeing that actually it's based on some pretty shaky reasoning, some of it. So, for example, in the guidance on the Act, it says, and I'm quoting, adult users of large user-to-user services will be able to verify their identity and access tools which enable them to reduce the likelihood that they see content from non-verified users and prevent non-verified users from interacting with their content. This will help stop anonymous trolls from contacting them. I think that is just a fake argument. You do not need someone to authenticate, to identify themselves in order to provide that level of control. All you need to do is give them the ability to say, I want these people to be able to contact me. I want only members of my family. I want only people with these email addresses. So because that's not a plausible rationale for making people verify their identity, I think it's legitimate to ask what other purpose the government might have for going down that route.
Goes back to what you said earlier about this not being a non-cynical position to take, or it's not being a non-cynical position to take, that this is probably due to more surveillance. I did not want to pursue that further, although I learned a few weeks ago from somebody online that, she said anyway, that what we call conspiracy theories, I'm not saying that's what it is, but what we call conspiracy theories these days are just spoiler alerts. I'm just telling you what's coming anyway.
Oh dear.
I thought, God.
That is depressing. So that first point is really about, look at the outcomes of a piece of legislation, not just the stated objectives of it, just because the outcomes are what matters. Okay. The second thing I think is, and we covered this a little bit, as we've seen over the weekend, that attempt to geofence the UK for age verification purposes doesn't seem to have worked as intended. And as I say, it may even have created a black market for unscrupulous people to exploit. So when an outcome like that emerges, we need to push politicians to explain why and ask what they're going to do about it. And then the last one of your themes for this, I think, was, what are we actually getting in practice from the Online Safety Act? And in practice, what we are getting is the legal foundations for an authoritarian state. I want to qualify that. I want to qualify that really carefully. Even if that's not the intention or the mindset of this government, the fact is that if a more authoritarian government came into power, it would find that it had all the legislative tools at its disposal to introduce, for example, a general monitoring obligation, to, for example, make it illegal for citizens to communicate confidentially at a distance. Essentially, it has all that it would need in the existing laws to do that. And I think that is an unhealthy path for a liberal democracy to open up through its legislation.
Wow, thank you very much, Robin. A lot of food for thought for our audience. I really appreciate this. Everybody, please go online. Oh, Robin, the second thing you said, the second point out of the last three, that perhaps the government should be challenged. As part of your advocacy work, do you want to say a bit about what you do, please, and where people can find out more about you? Thank you.
Yes, sure. You can look me up on the Internet Society website, or I'm also on LinkedIn. As a very quick summary, I'm so old that I entered the IT industry in 1984, a year not without resonance.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I spent 28 years in the IT industry itself as a technical specialist and a consultant on things like banking products, system security, system architecture, encryption. And then since about 2010, I've focused more on the policy aspects and on trying to translate between the policymakers who don't necessarily understand the technology and the technologists who don't necessarily want to have to engage with the mucky world of policymaking.
No, thank you. Okay, fantastic. Please, everybody, go onto the ISOC website, go to LinkedIn, look up our guest of today, Robin Wilton. It has been a very interesting conversation and quite enlightening. So thank you very much, Robin. It was very good to have you. Thank you.
You're welcome, Wede. Thanks so much for asking me along.
No problem. Thanks. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you.